gotten them there yet.
Good morning. Good Monday morning. Welcome. Buenos dias. Welcome to the Millionaire Mindset Book Club, Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. Hey, I know that last week I was going out of town and I said that I would post recordings, but I didn't. I read this chapter, and this is chapter 18, the value hierarchies, right? The ultimate judgment of success. And I think that this chapter is so important. Not that I had to do it in person because I'm recording anyway, but I think this is one of those chapters that I think you need to read. This will be like your additional homework. Read this chapter every day for a week, right? And each day you're going to change it up. You're going to change it up a little bit. So one of the reasons that I do the book club in the morning at 5:45 in the morning is, number one, it's before my schedule has a chance to take off, right? If I did it later in the day, I would always have to make sure that I scheduled appointments and stuff around the book club. And that's hard to, it's hard to do. It's hard to put something in your schedule, when you have other responsibilities. It's hard to put something in your schedule that says every Monday, every Tuesday, every day at this time, I'm going to do this, when you're working around other stuff. And so I do it at 5:45 so that there's not going to be anything else getting in my way. Although I started back at the gym this morning. My wife and I Susie and I used to go to the gym religiously. We go 5 days a week. We go to Raw Fitness here in El Paso. High intensity workouts. And then of course pandemic came, and we didn't go to the gym. Nobody went to the gym. And so I've been kind of half-ass, working out at home and stuff. Anyway, so Susie went back to the gym a while back. And so I started back this morning. So 4:50, right? 4:50. At the gym, I squeaked in here just a few minutes before the book club. And so today I feel okay, right? Because today I'm a little tight in the chest because we ran a little bit. Monday's a cardio day. And we did some arms. So later I might not be able to scratch my head, but anyway, it's talking about your value. This chapter, right, is talking about your values. And so we go back to, why was I doing this early in the morning? Number one, before your schedule gets out of the way. But number two is to try to get you going, to try to get people going early, right? Get the things that are important, that you need to get into your schedule, that you need to do every day. Get those into your schedule before the day takes over, right? Before the day takes over. You want to practice. You want to build your craft. You want to get better at what you do. When are you going to practice, right? And practice is important, right? It's imperative that you practice. When are you going to practice? When are you going to do your research, right? If you're in real estate, you got research to do, right? You got to do market analysis. You got to look at neighborhood trends and market trends and stuff like that. When are you going to do that? Are you going to do that during the day when you should be talking to people? Or are you going to do that at a different time of the day when most people aren't doing business, right? So that could be early in the morning, could be late at night. I prefer early in the morning, right? Some people prefer late at night. That's okay. But your values tell you what's important to you. So if practicing your craft is important to you, you will find time to do it, right? If self-improvement is important to you, you will carve out time to do it. And again, for me, that's early in the morning because there's not a lot of other distractions. So early to the gym, early to my self-development, my self-improvement, and then get on with my day, right? So the values in this chapter, he talks in this, I'll get to it. In this chapter, he talks about values and the things that are important to you. And the reason that I said that you should read this every day for a week and then tweak it a little bit is because in the chapter, in the book, he talks about identifying your values as they relate to relationships. right? As they relate to relationships. And remember, our values tell us what's important to us, right? They are our own private, personal, individual beliefs about what's most important to you. And in your belief, they're your belief systems about right and wrong and good and bad. In the book, he talks about Maslow, talking about values and as they relate to artists. But Tony Robbins puts it as to what's important in a relationship, right? So you think about, that's what we're going to talk about this morning, is about relationships and values as they identify the relationships. We all have a bottom line, right, when it comes to our values, right? What things that are more important to us above everything else. For some people, it's honesty. Honesty is something that you value more than anything else. If somebody is dishonest to you, if somebody lies to you, then you'll cut them out. You'll cut them out of your life. For some people, it's honesty. For other people, it's friendship. Some people might lie to protect a friend, even though honesty is important to them. And then, well, how does that work? Well, because friendship is more important to them than honesty, right? So you've got these different levels. They're higher, these ladders of importance, right? This hierarchy of values. So you may place a high value on business success, but also a high value on having a close family life. And so then it puts you into conflict, right? If you've got something planned with your family and then a business opportunity comes up, what do? Do you go for the business opportunity? This may be a once in a lifetime business opportunity, right? Is that more important to you than your family relationship? Right? It depends on your hierarchy of values, right? So in thinking about relationships, what's most important to you in a relationship? On page 350 in the book, he's got a list of values that relate to relationships, right? Love, ecstasy, these are in no particular order. Love, ecstasy, mutual communication, respect, fun, growth, support, challenge, creativity, beauty, attraction, spiritual unity, freedom, and honesty, right? So he's got all of those things listed under the values for relationships. And your list could be different, right? But identify, thinking about relationships now, identify the values, the things that you consider important in a relationship, right? And just put them down, no particular order. And again, he says these are by no means all the important values that there are. You might find other values, lots of other values that are different than the ones listed here. And if you can think of some, write them down. Now, the next thing to do is to rank these values in order of importance, right? Number 1 being the most important. Number in this list, there's 14 things. Number 14 being the least important, right? And you think about it, this is a little cumbersome, right? It's a little bit challenging. It might be very difficult for some, right? A little bit tiresome, a little bit confusing. As your list gets larger, it gets a little harder. But let's look at how do you compare, right? So you start with the first 2 things that you have on your list. Love, in this case, love and ecstasy. What's more important to you? Love or ecstasy, right? If the answer is love, then the next question is love more important than mutual communication? Right? Is love more important than mutual communication? If love is more important than mutual communication, then obviously love is still on the top. Second is ecstasy. Third is mutual communication. So now what's more important? Mutual communication or ecstasy, right? And so then you're gonna rank those. If mutual communication was more important to you than love, well, then you'd have to ask yourself, okay, what's more important than now? Well, we already know that love is more important than ecstasy. So mutual communication moves to the top, love moves second, mutual ecstasy would be third. Does that make sense? Maybe a little confusing. That's part of the reason that I want you to read this chapter every day. But I want you to do this. I want you to think, it's entirely up to you. Do this in all the different areas of your life. Relationships, business, right? Your spiritual life. What else? Your health. Your wealth, maybe health, wealth, business could all, I mean, could be the same. Wealth and business could be the same, but if you do these, and it might be a real challenge to sit down and do all those different areas of your life at one time, because it's a little tedious, right? But maybe you could do one a day, right? And as you read through the chapter over and over again, right, it gets a little clear. Maybe it gets a little clearer and a little easier for you, right? So most of the time we've done this already, right? You've done this already in your life, whether you know it or not. You've done this already in your life, but most of the time it's done subconsciously, right? It's in the back of our head. We haven't consciously sat down and said, okay, here are my values, right? There's a story on the news last night on the radio about Dave Chappelle. You know, everybody probably knows Dave Chappelle, right? Comedian, controversial comedian at times. And yesterday there was a story, we were listening on the radio, and there was a story about Dave Chappelle. A bunch of people in one of his comedy shows got up and walked out. And they got up and walked out because of his comments about the stuff that's going on between Israel and Gaza, right? Between Hamas and the Israelis. And he made a comment. He made a comment about, well, I won't get into all the specifics, but a bunch of people walked out. A bunch of people walked out because their values did not align with what Dave Chappelle was saying. No, that's fine. There was a story prior to this, and this part of what spurred Dave Chappelle on. There was a story prior to this where some college students, people getting ready to graduate from college, I think, or maybe they were interns. I may not have all the specifics right, but were turned down. They had jobs lined up, and they were let go. They hadn't started yet, but they were let go because of their pro-Palestinian beliefs, which is fine. There are people on both sides of every conflict, right? And so anyway, these people voiced their pro-Palestinian beliefs, and the businesses that had them online to hire said, no, we're not going to hire you. And the statement that was put out by the businesses were that the comments that were made by the individuals did not align with the values of the companies that were getting ready to hire them. When our values and our actions conflict, things don't work out, right? If you believe that honesty is most important, and you are working for a place that tells you to be dishonest in some way, you're not going to be happy there. You're going to be filled with this conflict all the time, right? So you'll quit, most likely. You'll quit. And so it's important for us. Like I said, we've done all of it. We've probably done this subconsciously, but this is putting it down on paper and getting it in line and saying, okay, this is the direction I want to go, right? I want to follow my values. Most of us have some values that conflict. This is page 368. Most of us have some values that conflict. We want to go out and we want to produce great results in the world, and we want to relax on the beach. We want to spend time with our families, and we want to work hard enough to be successful at our jobs. We want security, but we also want excitement, right? And so there's going to be some conflict. It's inevitable. It leads to richness and texture in our lives, right? The problem comes when fundamental values pull us in different directions, right? So after you read this chapter, and you can look at your value hierarchy and your evidence procedures, right, that identifying what's more important to you, to see where the conflicts are. And seeing them clearly is the first step to resolving them, right? Our values change over time. People change over time. The only people, I love this quote. This is Tony Robbins, right? He says, the only people who don't change are those who don't breathe, right? So the only people who don't change is those who don't breathe. So the important thing is to be aware of the flux, the change in our values, and to move with it, right? So I encourage you to read this chapter multiple times, right? Read this chapter multiple times. I think about the different areas in your life, right? The different areas in your life, relationships, work, or business. You could do it either way, right? Relationships, business, wealth, health, spiritual. What else? Think of, recreation, right? Recreation, or if you pronounce it a little bit differently, it's recreation, right? Recreation. We need to recreate in order to recreate, right? We go on vacation to refresh ourselves, right? So think about these different areas of your life and list your values out. Read through this chapter multiple times, right? Instead of having the recordings, we'll just finish up. We'll just be a couple days late starting our next book. Our next book is No Limits, right? John Maxwell's No Limits. I'll put a link. I think I put a link to this book in the Facebook group the other day. I'll put a link on the recording as well to the Amazon page as just full transparency. If you buy the book through the link, that's my affiliate link, and so I'll make a few pennies off the purchase. It's not much, but just full transparency, right? Okay, I'd love to see your comments, your questions, your concerns, either here in the Facebook group or on the YouTube page, right? Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, make me feel good, about myself, right? I'm back to the gym, raw fitness. You got to work on all those different areas of your life, right? We're well-rounded people, even if we can't talk. Excuse me. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Make today the best day of your life so far. See you tomorrow.